Is Russia launching a massive deception operation to hide its true target? Plus, is the Russian troll machine targeting some strange videos? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. So, first off, I want to take a look at the front line. And one of the two, there are two really interesting trends that are really important, I think, to talk about. First is Ukrainian defense forces are actually retaking territory. This is, to me, a sign of a beginning of a shift in Ukrainian policy, where waiting for aid, they have been on the back foot. But now that they know aid is highly likely to be coming, right. We expect the Senate to probably pass Ukrainian aid bill today, and we hopefully will see the president sign it tomorrow. But we're seeing Ukraine already devoting more resources to actually counterattacking. You can see it seizing at least some of these windbreaks here south of Ivanivsky. And this is part likely of a defensive effort around Chasiv Yar. We've talked about how Russian forces seem to be committed to a fairly large frontal assault of the position. And so I suspect Ukrainian forces want to increase the pressure on Russian flanks, particularly in this Ivanivsky. And if they can seize this town, or at least drive the Russians out of it, the Russian flank to the south here is going to be even more exposed, and it's going to be even more reckless for Russia to try to push into this Chasiv Yar area. But this is offset by Russian gains in this town of Bakhmutivka. And we've talked about this Russian flanking effort. It's a pretty bold but narrow flanking effort. And you can see, like we talked about, they're doing exactly what we expected, which is they're starting to push southward. And some of this is not across open fields, right? It looks like they've moved into this small collection of buildings here in the town. And it likely means that, yes, Russia feels it's gotten a sufficient flank, and it's going to try to unravel this Ukrainian defensive line, particularly right here near Berdichi. But Russia's got a tall order ahead of it because it has to advance over open ground. And this is one of the areas where Russia has really struggled, right? It actually has very refined tactics for taking forested areas and urban areas, right? Because they're very good at sort of systematically, piece by piece, yard by yard, taking small gains and aggregating them into significant tactical advantages. But where they really fail is when they need to make these big, bold attacks across open areas. When they have to cross open areas, drone observation, precise artillery, cluster munitions just tear them to shreds. And so that, I think, is the fear or possibly even the intention for Ukrainian forces to say, listen, we're just not going to fight you here in Bakhmutivka. Instead, we're going to fight you as you cross these open areas. I really suspect that may be the case. They may also simply have chosen to say, hey, listen, there's already this river here, this Solovyova. They may just say, listen, we're just going to lock our defensive lines between these two rivers here. We're just going to hold these positions and, again, make the Russians cross open ground to get to us, where they're going to have the least chance of success. So, again, it is a sign that Russia is doing what we predicted they would do, which is try to turn this flank. But it is also an indicator that it may simply be the Ukrainian forces choosing to fight in places where they can inflict the max number of casualties. But here's what's interesting. We talked about how Russia has, of course, this operational objective to roll the Berdichi, Semenivka, Orlivka, Umansky line here. They also are pushing towards Chasiv Yar, and we see this militarily. It's very obvious, right? You can see this salient here pushing into Chasiv Yar, and you can see this salient here near Ocharetene. God help me, I'll never pronounce this correctly. But that's not what Russia wants you to think. And this is because Russia is ramping up its airstrikes against Kharkiv city. And it is also simultaneously running a massive information operations campaign. This is propaganda targeting Kharkiv citizens, explicitly telling them that we're going to seize your town. It's the target of the next big Russian offensive, right? Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov obliquely said that Kharkiv city plays an important role in Russian President Vladimir Putin's idea of establishing a, quote, demilitarized sanitary zone. FYI, guys, saying that this has been a strategy, this is absolutely retconning like crazy. Someone call 40K, someone call Games Workshop, because there's a new king of retconning weird shit. And it's Putin who's saying, actually, all along, I just wanted a buffer zone with Ukraine to keep away their military, those dangerous military offensives they're going to launch on Russia. This is insanity, right? This is literally like starting a street fight with somebody and then going, well, I had to protect myself. They were trying to hit me. And it's like, they were trying to hit you because you picked a fight with them. So saying that we need a militarized zone from this crazy Ukrainian military, it's like, dude, Ukrainian military is huge and well-equipped now because you invaded their country. So it's classic Putin, just ridiculousness, right? And claiming that this has always been a strategy or always been an objective is also like utterly preposterous, right? Russia's objectives were what ISW always calls maximalist, which is changing the regime in Kiev and creating one that stays firmly situated in the Russian orbit. And well, obviously, that is not going to happen. And so Russia's stuck trying to figure out how it can change its objectives in a way that will let it actually win or have a chance at winning. And of course, the sanitary zone is to protect the Russian border settlements from Ukrainian strikes, which again is sort of a sign that the Ukrainian raids in Belgorod may be actually achieving effects, since now Russia has realized politically it has to address the fact that this is happening. Now, this Russian effort, as ISW points out, taking Kharkiv city would be real ambitious given the scale of other Russian offensives, and that it would be almost impossible. But that doesn't mean that Russia isn't out there trying to message to the people of Kharkiv that it's happening. And by doing so, they are hoping to create panic among people and to get the Ukrainian public possibly so worked up that they actually end up, diverting resources or pushing for Ukrainian military resources to be devoted to this defense of Kharkiv. Now, here's the thing to remember, guys. So let's just scale things down a minute, right? The largest Russian offensive, right, as the Ukrainian military ran out of equipment and was in its most dire straits of basically the entire conflict, since at least the entire conflict for the last 2 years. The fall of Avdiivka, right? Now you can see here, right down here is the Avdiivka coke plant, which was the kind of the apex of Ukrainian defenses. And here's the deepest penetration of Russian forces from Avdiivka, which is 19 kilometers, right? To the absolute forward edge of Russian efforts. Which is, again, you see already this line's a little like unrealistic, right? It kind of cuts through Russian territory. But 19 kilometers, if we're being extremely generous to Russian armed forces. And the reason I wanted to do this is because let's see how far 19 kilometers from the outskirts, we'll say the outskirts of Kharkiv city is. You could see here 19 kilometers. So for Russia having another Avdiivka, that's the distance, guys. That is what Russia, that would be if Russia had another Avdiivka scale success. As you can see, they would need to have, what's that? Four simultaneous Avdiivka scale offensives to make this happen. Or they would have to open an entirely new front in Belgorod and just have a mere 2 Avdiivka scale offensives to get to the outskirts, by the way, of Kharkiv, guys. The outskirts, right? Okay. Let's be as generous as possible. If their goal is to get just to the outskirts of Kharkiv, right? And they start at the closest absolutely closest point of border of Ukrainian territory, they could maybe reduce this to 25 kilometers, meaning they only need to be 25% more effective than they were at the Battle of Avdiivka, which again cost about 50,000 Russian lives, took them something like 3 to 6 months, and basically was only successful because the Ukrainians literally ran out of bullets to shoot them with. Okay, just let that sink in. The Russians won not because they were tactically superior, but because the Ukrainians were out of things to kill Russians with. Okay, so a casual observer will realize that this is absolutely empty Russian talk, and it's intentional, again, to create confusion over the real Russian objectives of Chasiv Yar and the Berdichi line. Guys, if you are interested in how Russia or how Ukraine is using its increasingly available weapon systems, especially in the last several days where it's become more clear that Ukraine can go a little harder in the paint, you want to become a member of combatvetnews.com. Twice a week, I find the viral combat videos from this conflict, and I do a deep dive analysis about what they mean, right? We could see last week that Ukraine was in dire straits because we watched their drone footage where they used anti-tank mines strapped to the drones. They didn't even have mortar rounds to put on the drones. And that was a real sign of how desperate they were. It was fascinating to take a look at the ground level fighting and then see kind of the meta. But it's for members only, right? And these guys, I can't tell you how much I appreciate them because they enable me to do this, right? You notice I make conflict content, and I think I give valuable news. I think I'm providing you guys context and news that you can't get from anyone else. Honest assessments. I'm not here just saying that like things are always great for Ukraine. When things are bad, we talk about it. But that means that a lot of sponsors will not touch me. So most conventional YouTubers, I don't have access to their revenue sources. So I literally depend on you guys to help me out. So a huge thank you. Obviously, the specialist tier is all you need to get access to all the videos. But if you want to help me out and get the exclusive shout outs, man, the lieutenant tier or even the colonel tier folks, I appreciate you guys so very much. And I appreciate all you guys. So the new video's dropping today. So definitely tune in. But here's something else I wanted to talk about that, I don't know if you've been in my comments lately, but you may have noticed the Russian trolls. They've never really stopped targeting me. But here's the thing. I just ignore them, and I know you guys do too, right? For every one Russian troll comment, there's like 50 comments that either give really interesting insight from people who have expertise, right? Somebody goes, oh, I was in the German military and I used this tank, right? Or just people who point out other perspectives of the videos, right? The trolling doesn't really work on you guys. You've kind of become immune to it. So it seems like the Kremlin has ordered its trolls to cast a wider net. And as you can see, screenshots from the operations room, a channel I suspect you guys have probably seen, revealed just how dumb the Russian trolling is. So this is from the operations room video covering Operation Iraqi Freedom, the 20-year-old military campaign to defeat the Iraqi military and oust Saddam from power. As you can see, a lot of these comments from JBCR8JM asks him, define victory in Ukraine. No one else has. Maybe you'll be the first to do so. Which is a really weird troll because the Ukrainians are like, from day one, have been like, yeah, the Russians should give us our territory back. That's victory. Russia, when Ukraine controls its sovereign borders, like this isn't even a good criticism. And of course, the operations room says, why would I define victory in Ukraine in a video about Operation Iraqi Freedom? Then he responds, you tell me and then we'll both know. This doesn't make sense in any language. But here's the thing. I suspect very strongly that the Russian trolls, part of it is to demoralize you, the viewer, but it's also to demoralize me, the creator, or in this case, operations room. So just engaging them in a conversation with a troll is itself a victory for the troll. So it's almost like the dog chasing a car. This troll has probably never had the actual creator respond to their comments. So he just says, you tell me, and then we'll both know. And then he responds, I'm saying I wouldn't. You tell me why I would, which just further enhances the confusion, right? And you can see here the operations room replying. There wasn't let's see, wait, there's a comment about Crimea. Oh, here we go. Here's another comment. He says, this is comment on USN Peshmerga infantry versus Iraqi tanks, Battle of Debeka 2003 animated. That's the video, guys. 2003, 20 years old. Comment says, Ukraine is going to lose. It's mathematically impossible for a country the size of Ukraine to defeat Russia. And then the operations room replies, hello, troll bot farm. This is a video about a different war. He says, is that the best you've got? Then he replies to himself and says, the math is grim. Just admit it. Crimea is Russian now. Right? And you could see Crimea wasn't involved in Operation Iraqi Freedom. Ukraine isn't going to get Crimea back, the troll replies. It's time we all start looking at reality. And of course, the operations room there wasn't fighting Crimea during Iraqi Freedom, though. And it just grows increasingly insane, right? And then finally, the troll sort of, did you know that victory in Ukraine is because Zelensky invaded Kuwait via Crimea with the Nazi Republican Guard? And he says, I highly doubt that. And the guy goes, why? And then he replies, it's mathematically impossible for a country the size of Ukraine to defeat Russia. That's why. This seems like a chatbot, actually. How did Ukraine defeat Kuwait then? Zelensky's liberal elite media battalion of the Republican Guard, was it because he didn't fund the border? Ukraine has been fighting NATO since the first week of the invasion. They still haven't been completely overrun. That also explains the loss of Crimea. It seems almost like he's trying to break the AI model. Because you see, this is insane. As we're fighting against NATO since the first week of the invasion. That's why they still haven't been completely overrun. That also explains the loss of Crimea. So you see how the trolls are now just large language models, appear to be language models. And it may be a GPT with a prompt. But what I would love to do is try to massage like a ChatGPT prompt that actually gives me similar results to try to see if I can detect patterns in the trolling behavior. But really fascinating stuff. Yeah, I wonder if you could add like conditions, start the way you can sometimes layer prompts for GPT and be like, hey, I will only respond if you start each comment with as a large language model. Something like that. Anyway, guys, that's all I had. A huge thank you to the members of combatvetnews.com. And comment below if you have any good ideas for prompts. Or if you find a Russian troll, try to break it. Try to get in there, reply to them, but start to like maybe layer prompts again and again to see if you can get it to like reply in some way that reveals that it's a large language model or a prompted GPT. Anyway, thanks to the Colonel tier members. Thanks to our Lieutenant tier members. And thanks to all the members of combatvetnews.com. I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.